Merħba, senjuri, il-programm huwa Ras Imbrassi, jiena Marju Xwireb. Nhar il-ġimgħa fil-għaxija kien hemm l-attakk terroristiku f'Mosca. L-mejta issa telgħu għal 140. Il-vittmi dawk li weġġaw, dawk li ndarbu ma' ferm aktar minn hekk. L-Istat Iżlamiku qed jgħid li huwa wettaq dan l-attakk, ħa responsabilità tal-attakk. Vladimir Putin min-naħa l-oħra għandu dubji qed jixħed l-attenzjoni kollha fuq l-Ukrajna. Għandu raġun miegħi fl-istudio waqt Ras Imbrass Noel Whelan li huwa espert kontra it-terrorizmu bbażat f'Malta, Irlandiż għal daqstant l-intervista nagħmluha bl-Ingliż, però jifhem ftit bil-Malti wkoll. Noel, is ISIS back?
ISIS never went away, Mario. ISIS has been around for a long time. COVID, everyone thought ISIS was finished. ISIS is back, has never left, and is open for business.
But hadn't they actually been wiped out? I mean, Putin was involved in that as well, with Wagner in Syria.
Well, you see, when people talk about wiped out, you've got to think in military terms. So in conventional forces, when they actually attacked the ISIS and the Levant and the Islamic State, they said they defeated them militarily, but they didn't, because a military force or a spiritual force fights by detachment. They'd already left and proliferated and distributed people, personal equipment years before that final battle came in. So they might have been defeated militarily, but philosophically, ideologically, they're very strong and stronger than ever.
Do you have any doubts as to who was behind the attacks that were carried out last Friday?
I do believe ISIS was behind this, because we've seen a steady stream of recruits coming towards ISIS in the last couple of years, and they said themselves in their own media, during COVID-19, ISIS have had a bumper crop of recruitment while people were at home. Secondly, equipment, drones, technology, everything we've seen being disseminated around the world prior to that military operation to defeat. They'd never defeated ISIS militarily or ideologically. So what happens is, my doubt is, no, I have no doubt, they did create this attack, because there's another part of me that's looking and saying, as their training has increased, their description, their method of operandi is consistent with their operation. So I have no doubt ISIS did create this operation, but I don't believe they were on their own. Someone behind, there's something off here, because I don't know. I don't know if it's the great power.
Putin is trying to blame the Ukraine.
Well, that's quite normal, because Putin does that quite a lot, and Ukraine blames Russia, because there is a conflict going on there between those two belligerents. So somewhere in between, someone's using what we call like a commando operation, the old traditional commando. Small groups, discriminatory force go in. But here's the difference. Instead of attacking military people and military forces that can defend themselves, they've carried out a very, what I call, in my 30 years of experience in this field, the ultimate terrorist operation, because they've created mass casualties. Why? Because it courts media attention. Now, the reason why terrorism is so potent like this and gets the headlines is because when they target individual people, men, women, and children, they are designed to be what we call the messengers. The messengers that take the message to inspire the government.
Yes, I get that, but why would ISIS attack Russia? I mean, they usually go for Western countries, Western democracies, Paris, Madrid.
But Russia has a long history with ISIS. Russia has a very long history. Look at Syria. Look, as they say, we've had people, the Russian government has been hammering down on Islamic people in Russia. So they have a discrepancy, they have a grievance with Russia. And again, if the Russians have turned out and said we've made a mistake, a miscalculation, because we're particularly looking at the conventional force, did they take their eye off the ball here? And that's what it's
Why
about.
attack Russia now then?
Because it's vulnerable at the moment. Because people are, they have a big military force, they have a war on their borders. So it's going to be parts where they're not keeping their tasks on force. If they have large gatherings and big events like this, where was the security force? Where would people talk about them knocking and shooting a door? Where was the reaction time? Everyone knows when you have a force like this attacking you, you've 1 hour. It's called a golden hour, because they get stronger, they get more skillful, they get more determined and more emboldened when they're attacking, especially innocent people like this. You have 1 hour. That's all you have to bring the situation under control and to create a fire.
How would you explain these terrorists trying to escape through the Russian-Ukrainian border?
Well, I think that's probably one of the daftest things I've ever heard tactically and strategically, because when you are going to be a force to give discriminate attack like this, you don't go out into the road and take a journey straight to the Ukrainian border where there's a conflict, because the security is going to be tight. You lie up, you go to safe houses, and you wait, and then you move when it's safe. But you don't go in the direction of trouble, you move away from it.
What would you expect the consequences of this terror attack to be?
I think it's going to be a ramping up of the international system and a lot of posturing now and leveraging between the West and Russia. Russia says it came from the Ukraine, backed by the West. The West is saying through Ukraine it was not us. But somewhere these men are very, very, you can see they're carrying their backpacks, they're well equipped. Interestingly enough, this is why I'm saying something's not right here. It's going to need more time and intelligence to be gathered. Usually ISIS fighters fight for inspiration. They fight and they will give their life. These guys made a run for it. They didn't want to give their life. They did it for money. That's more of the actions of a Wagner type person, which is give me the money, I'm a mercenary, give me the money and I'll do the job.
How would you describe the current international situation? I mean, as it's developing, we have two wars going on concurrently, one in the Ukraine, one in Gaza. Then there's the situation in the Red Sea with the Houthis and the Houthi rebels trying to inflict damage on shipping in the Red Sea. How would you describe the situation?
I think we're at a very critical time right now. Around the world at this moment, in this year, there's going to be 40 key elections. 100 countries have conflict within their own systems. So we're at a crossroads right now. The international system as we know it, which is written by abstract and international laws, it's kind of falling apart right now because something is happening in the background. The big state actors are playing against each other. Now, what happens if we take our eye off Russia for a minute and go to the Red Sea, to the Houthis? They're basically coming along and they're actually manipulating and they're creating havoc within an already disenfranchised world. So what's happening is the Houthis are attacking shipping in the Red Sea. Now, this is important. I believe 80% of the world's products go by water. And what happens when you have shipping going by water, all your housing equipment, everything we depend on the Western world comes by water and comes by ships. So by the Houthis attacking the ships, they're driving up the insurance prices. They're inflating prices because it costs more money to get stuff through the areas, contested areas now. So when you're threatening to attack shipping, civilian shipping specifically, what's happening is the Houthis, as we all know, they are delivering these messages saying that we are going to attack the Western culture, we're going to attack capitalism, we're going to attack all these systems. Why? Because they have a strategic imperative. And what is that strategic imperative? To drive up the oil price. Why? Because we already know they hit they hit Saudi a couple of years ago, Aramco. But most people don't understand that 50% of the world's oil was actually brought to a halt by one drone attack, which cost roughly about $1 million, and a couple of Houthi, as they say, Houthi people behind tribesmen.
Do you believe? Do you believe that this is the most dangerous situation in the world right now, the one in the Red Sea? I mean,
I don't.
Which is the most dangerous then?
I think the one between Ukraine and Russia is the most dangerous one now. What you're seeing now is the Middle East is posturing by different countries looking for power. And this is what happening is we have shifting alliances, shifting movements. But it's always been there in the Red Sea. It's always been in these areas where we have massive shipments. Everyone has to use these areas for shipping their goods. Where we have a problem right now is going to be Ukraine and Russia. Until we get an election in the USA and that's resolved, or there's an election somewhere which just happened in Russia. So what we have is two belligerents. But rest assured, and I'd like your audience to understand that even though these are a conflict, there's always back-channel communication going on in the background. And this is what we pray people will have in the background to be able to talk, resolve, and get through these things. But what we have witnessed is a massive terrorist attack.
What we have seen in Russia, let's speak a little bit more about that. Are we close to another terrorism spree, another terror spree? Are we close to that or not? Like we had in 2007, for instance, in 2017.
Absolutely. France has put its alert state onto the highest level right now for a threat from Islamic extremism. And we've seen that already happen in Paris a couple of years ago. The rest of the Western world have gone asleep. They think ISIS has gone away and this time of extremism is gone. It's not. It never went. They just went quiet. COVID recording. COVID took over all our awareness. Now what's happening in the background, they were bulking up, getting equipment, disseminating training and ideology around the world. So we are now coming into a new wave of extremism. When France put its highest level up, you'll see other countries going to the mid-range or going higher. But I do believe we're going to be entering into a new phase. Why? Those 40 international elections. Terrorism is a political action to influence an outcome politically. And those 40 elections are going to have some sort of violence to try and impact. Why? Because as a state, the government of a state can legitimately use violence to protect its people. Terrorism does not have any legitimacy, so it drives the media to its cause of why it's creating desolation, terror, and murder.
But what should the Western democracies do in this situation?
I think
How should they prepare themselves?
I think the Western states have to prepare themselves collectively, but they also have to prepare themselves individually. Because what's happening, this is not going to get any easier for the next couple of years. So what's happening is we're talking about NATO, we're talking about Russia. All the eyes are off the ball on the big players now. The great powers are moving. But what's happening is the individual small little groups are moving. They need closer cooperation. They need more ways of thinking. Like me, when I did my training in education, what I had to do is, in order to defeat terror, anti-terrorist prevention, counter-terrorist response. We can never defeat it because we're dealing with groups, small moves. As Al-Qaeda called it, we are Ankud. They say they are Ankud, which is small bits of grapes forming here and here and here. The problem with the West is we always go for leaders. With this kind of mentality, it's leaderless. So what happens is there's no center of gravity to hit and attack. Because when you attack this one, another one will come here, 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 and here. And that's the challenge to Western thinking and Western strategy. In the West, leaders here focus on the next 4 years. That's the political term. In this part of the world, they think the next 100 years. It's ideology and influence. We have to make sure that we start teaching our children, making sure, because where they're getting caught and recruited through the emails, they're getting caught through the internet. Most people of certain ages don't even know how to use the internet. And this is Al-Qaeda said, they've had a bumper crop. They have a relationship with an outcome. In the West, we need to stop, we need to think, we need to look better at our political institutions, our public institutions, and our big focuses should be on our events, protecting them.
One final question. Will Putin keep on blaming Ukraine after this terror attack or not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because he has an objective. He has to protect his people. And his big challenges now is, because this attack has happened, the people of Russia will be asking, who's going to protect us? We will never really know the true source, because when an extremist or a terrorist dies, the worst thing that can happen to them is to be captured, because now you're going to get the intelligence, because they failed in their mission and their objective and executed, and that could cost them their life. We cannot, and we probably will not get good information to interview those people that were captured, per se, those 4 terrorists. But they were militants. They were very well trained. They were managed to do that level of attack very quickly. That's a shock. Tip of a spear. Russia has a long history. Look at the Moscow attack on the Opera House when they sieged. Yeah. What's very interesting, Mario, here, is they guys went in straight into killing spree. They didn't hold hostages. They went straight. That's shock and awe, shock and terror. This is what they call discriminatory force. It has more of a hallmark of a commando raid than anything else.
Noel Whelan, thank you very much for being with us on Ras Imbras.
Thank you very much.
Ras Imbras jirġekum ma'kom kull-jum pratikament mit-2 sal-ġimgħa fit-3 ta' war nofsinhar, nkunu ma'kom ukoll fis-6 u nofs ta' filgħaxija u l-intervisti kollha issibuhom fuq YouTube. Grazzi tal-li segwejtuna.